Wow, what a start! This is just what I wanted to see! Everyone, 1 minute to go. Are you ready? The engines sound like they're ready to go. Are you all set? 3, 2, 1, go!
Hello everyone and welcome back. In this week's video, I take a look at another absolutely superb example of a 3D polygon racing game. Ridge Racer is a 1993 racing video game developed and published by Namco for arcades. It is the first installment in Namco's Ridge Racer series released on the Namco System 22 arcade system board. Ridge Racer was notable for being the first arcade video game with 3D texture mapped graphics, with its System 22 hardware capable of texture mapping and Gurad shading. The game is based on a trend among Japanese car enthusiasts, which involves racing on mountain roads while drifting around corners, and it spent about 8 months in development, if you can believe that. And I only say that as Ridge Racer has one very glaring flaw. It is incredibly track limited. Of course, there are 3 options, but only 2 track layouts, meaning the replay value is somewhat limited. But did this make Ridge Racer a bad game? Absolutely not. Ridge Racer was, and still is, one of the very best examples of a racing game to ever grace an arcade. Or pub, which is where I first played this masterpiece.
Hey, somebody's right on your tail! Next corner stop, watch yourself!
So let's get into what makes this game so good, and I have to prepare you here as there will be more than a few references to Daytona USA. I mean, why wouldn't there be? The visuals in this game are absolutely outstanding, super smooth, super sharp, and for me, when I seen and played it for the first time in 1994, I thought it must have been running off a laserdisc or something. When you compare it to Daytona USA, which has outstanding visuals as well, Sega went for this more gritty look, a more in-your-face arcade feel. Namco went in a different direction with Ridge Racer and opted instead for this almost simulator look to them. There are no fancy large objects in the background that move around to catch your eye, nothing to distract your focus from the racing. Another difference is the lack of available viewpoints. Daytona featured 4 viewing angles, but Ridge Racer has only one, and that is from the cockpit of the car. Which wasn't a problem for me, as I felt this viewpoint is actually the best way to play both games anyway. And now that I was getting driving lessons, it somehow made the game so much more realistic as well.
Next corner stop, watch yourself!
No racing game is complete without great effects or great music. And by God, the music in Ridge Racer is simply sublime. It isn't to everyone's taste, and it wasn't my first choice of theme, but bugger me sideways, it doesn't half fit this game and really push you along the way. It's akin to the music from the rave scene that was massively popular in Europe in the 90s, but how it ended up in a game made in Japan is a complete mystery. But frankly, it's one I don't see the need to solve, as it is absolutely amazing.
Me? Hey, somebody's right on your tail! Okay, the final lap. Hang in there. Hey, somebody's right on your tail.
And when compared to the music in Daytona, which is great as well, the soundtrack to Ridge Racer beats it hands down. The sound effects are probably on a par with those in Daytona, and I don't think there is one that is better than the other. They do their job, but could be better. But the music is so loud, it just takes over. And there is another big difference between Daytona and Ridge Racer, and that is the announcer guy. This guy is like some kind of motivational speaker. His woos and okays are amazing and just add to the huge atmosphere generated by this game.
Woo! That was a great counter! You must be one genius of a driver. You've got to teach me! Wow, what a start! This is just what I wanted to see! Hey, somebody's right on your tail!
So now, it's time to look at the playability. And I already mentioned a flaw in this game was the lack of tracks. But to be honest, it's not even such a big deal. The atmosphere alone in this game makes you want to come back for more. That, and the drifting.
Next corner's down. Watch yourself.
Up to this point, drifting in racing games was seen as something that happens when you go in too hard to a corner, or when you're about to lose control. But in Ridge Racer, it's actively encouraged, and in fact, it's the quickest way around some of the corners. And that sense of flinging the front end into a tight right-hander, and then hitting the accelerator, and catching the slide with opposite lock, and narrowly avoiding the wall or another car, was like no other feeling a video game had ever generated. It was mind-blowing, and it made you feel like a driving god. By the time I discovered this game, it was already a year old, and I had played Daytona USA before I played this, but when I first seen the visuals, I thought this game had to be newer, as the whole thing looked more impressive visually than Daytona USA. But the fact I only ever seen this game in pubs was crazy, especially when trying to play it after 6 pints. A very good advert for not drinking and driving. And maybe that was the whole idea. And I guess the adult setting of the pub also lent itself to the feeling that this game was more of a simulator than an arcade experience, especially when comparing it to Daytona USA. But regardless of all that, I have so many great memories of this game in pubs. There was a pub in Glasgow called the Brewhouse. This wasn't a sawdust on the floor joint or anything. It was actually pretty decent, and they had a Ridge Racer 2-player cabinet in the pub, But as well as that, this pub had pretty lazy bouncers, and they allowed people in who were not the legal age, which was handy, as a few mates of mine were not old enough to get into boozers yet, but getting into the brewhouse was not a problem for them. We headed up one Friday night, drank many beers, and played Ridge Racer many times. And the whole atmosphere in the place was great, and this all added to the mystique of this game for me. It came at that crossroads time in my life where I thought I may have to give up playing video games, as I was maybe seen to be too old for them. But the fact that this game was found in pubs, and the fact I played several two-player games of it against random strangers who were maybe in their 30s, told me that I didn't need to stop playing video games, and it was okay to still be a video game addict. Needless to say, once I realised I had to get myself a PlayStation, which was round about August 1995, I knew I had to get Ridge Racer on it. It simply was a must-have purchase.
Hurry! Next corner stop. Come on, cheer up. You can try again. You'll do it next time.
The PlayStation version of Ridge Racer is one of the best games to ever be released onto the format in my opinion, and even from the start you get this little nod to Namco's past with this mini Galaga game, which, if you shoot all the enemy craft, you receive a bonus in the full game. Visually, a lot was lost. The frame rate was cut in half to around about 30 frames per second, and the visuals looked rough and had a serious amount of clipping in places. But the playability and the sound was spot on, and for me, that was all that mattered. The atmosphere was recreated perfectly well in this home port. Another neat little touch with this game was that as the track variation was limited, it meant the entire thing was loaded into RAM, and the CD was used to play the music. And you could actually remove the CD and pop in a CD of, say, I don't know, The Prodigy, and you race along to No Good or something. And that was frickin' awesome too. The game also featured a third-party view of the car, which actually looks pretty awful, and it really does seem to mess up the handling as well. But it was an option for those gamers, maybe put off by the cockpit view.
Next corner stop. Watch yourself.
I played the hell out of this game in the winter of 1995. That winter was brutal here in Scotland. We had temperatures of about -12 or something, and all I remember was I had not long passed my driving test and my parents bought me a car, but I couldn't use it in the winter as the fuel had started to go all gloopy and the car wouldn't start. But not only that, this was the winter I spoke of in my Tekken video, when my mates went out for a smoke with Mary Jane and their eyes and bong had frozen. So anyway, a lot of that winter was spent indoors, drinking beers and playing Tekken, and of course, playing Ridge Racer. and it was on one of those nights that my mate was determined to beat the dark Solvolo car and then be able to select it for use in a race. It took a little longer than he thought, mainly due to the amount of Budweisers and vodka and cokes he was drinking, but he got there in the end. But was it worth it? Well, that's debatable, but it was a great laugh, and yet another great memory I have of this game. The home port of Ridge Racer was a bit of a mixed bag with critics, but personally I loved this game, and in fact, over the years, I bought several other iterations of this great game. The combination of great playability and amazing soundtrack with the enthusiastic commentator just made it such a fun game to play. But the big question is it better than Daytona USA? And that is not an easy question to answer. But what I will say, I have far more memories of this game, and I always enjoyed this game more than Daytona USA. But those are not qualities that make it a better game, just a better gaming experience for me. But that was my look back at Ridge Racer. If you enjoyed this video, then please do all the usual like, comment and subscribe malarkey. And as always, a massive thank you to everyone who has viewed, commented and subscribed to my channel. And that's all from me folks. Thanks for watching.